Hi all, I'm Jaideep Bommidi and I'm here to present my final project on atopic exposure and health risk assessment across the United States for the course ADTA 5250, and I'm using Tableau, and I've created a dashboard with different visualizations using parameters and different calculation fields to create a proper presentation. Today, we tackle the complex issue of air pollution and its impact on human health and environment. So I have taken the dataset from the National Scale 8 Office Assessment. It provides packed information of chemical concentration, exposure, and health risks. The audience which I have considered are public health officials and epidemiologists. They can leverage this data to identify pollution hotspots, link this to health risks, and create targeted strategies or policy changes. Now, in my first graph, as you can see here, I have plotted selected measure against state. Here I can see in the selected measure I have plotted concentration, exposure, and risk levels. So in the first plot, as you can see, the concentrations of air toxins are very high in California and New York, followed by Texas, Florida, and Illinois, and the least are with Wyoming, Virgin Islands, North Dakota, and South Dakota. So let us see how much exposure to this concentration the people are having, and we can see that California, New York, Texas, Florida, and Illinois occupy the top spot, and Wyoming, Virginia Islands, and North Dakota and South Dakota hold the least. Now, since we have seen the concentration and exposure level, let's see how the health risks are there. So here we can see that the health risks are also in proportion to the previous plot, and California and New York on the top, and they're more than half of the um, aggregator or the average value, and followed by Texas and Florida, and Wyoming and Virgin Islands, North Dakota and South Dakota for the least. Now we have only checked how the states are performing based on the concentrations, exposures, and health risks. Now let us see how the population of these states are correlated with these parameters of concentration and exposure or risk levels. So here, as you can see, I have plotted a scatter plot to understand the correlation, and each circle is a state with its respective measure. Now, as you can see here, I have created a parameter because as you can see, these small states with less population are very much cluttered. So here I can set a minimum value so that I can see which states are being used there, and you can see here the population of Wyoming, North Dakota, and South Dakota are less than 10 million, and hence they have very least exposure as well as the risk levels. And now if I go further along the line, I can see for different states, and if I go top of the line, and you can see that California has the highest population and also exposure and as well as the risk levels, and Texas is the exception among all this, even though it has a higher population compared to New York, but it has a half of exposure and risk levels. So I suggest the public health officials take how the Texas state are implementing the restrictions and policies to have a very healthy environment and human health. Talking about human health, now let us try to understand how chemicals are affecting the human health in this paragraph. As you can see here, it's plotted against respiratory system, whole body, thyroid, neurons, and liver, kidney, and immunity versus the toluene, diesel, cyanide chemicals. Now you can see here, if I take all the states into consideration, then the respiratory system are being affected a lot, and they are affected by diesel, and neural and thyroid are affected by cyanide, and benzene is affecting the immunity. Now, for example, if I take California as my first state, I can see here that the respiratory system in the California are getting affected a lot, and but the rest of the human systems are fine because of the exposure and the concentration levels. Now, one might question now, why should only take the highly populated states or highly populated, highly concentrated toxic places? But let's go a state like Kansas. It has a population of 7.5 million, but here you can see even though they have very less exposure to chemicals and health risks, but still there are chemicals like diesel and benzene which are affecting the respiratory and the immunity of the body, and hence the public health officials can use these three charts as a whole idea of how the toxins are affecting the human body and the state and the population in them, and they can also take the respective measures for those states because the immunity is getting affected in expenses, and Similarly, in California, it is not getting affected. So, hence, I gives an overall idea about which states and which policies to be taken for which states. So, to conclude, we have very intriguing conclusions and the investigations we made, and we can recommend focusing on interplay of these factors and stimulate research into industries emanating air toxins and industries and dive deeper into the chemical health system interactions. Our goal remains to foster healthy environments and communities and making our findings crucial stepping stones towards